Welcome to the Ghost Show online, my fiends, booze, and ghouls. Your hosts, Seika Groves, Rachel Benter, and Ian Russell will discuss all things paranormal. Prepare to be afraid.
Today's show topic is ghost ships. So that can kind of mean a few different things. It can mean haunted ships, actual ships. It can mean ships that come in a form of an apparition. It can be ghostly, I suppose, crew members on board a actual working ship. So we've got lots of things that we can talk about today in various directions. And for me, this one's sort of, again, right up my alley, because with our haunted history tours, we actually do a tour along the shores of Lake Erie and talk about the ghost fleet that is often seen on the lake. As well, there's a number of other instances surrounding ships in the area. And I know, Ian, you wanted to talk about the Queen Mary, I think.
We'll get to that, but I want to go back to the military theme that Rachel brought up.
Okay.
And excuse me, when back in 2014, when Trudy and I were first getting into the paranormal, there was a bus tour that was being arranged by our friends here in Hamilton at the Ghost Walks to go over to Buffalo, New York to visit the Buffalo Naval Memorial Park.
Oh, I have been there myself numerous times.
And at the park,
I need to check that place out.
There's a submarine, there's a naval destroyer, and there's I believe it's a frigate is the other ship.
Right, yeah, there's a small frigate there.
And unfortunately, we couldn't attend. And Trudy was a little disappointed with this, because she wanted to go and see these ships and hear the ghost stories. And I don't know if they were planning on maybe doing a small investigation. So anyways, I thought about it for a little bit, and I said, well, you know what? Hey, we don't have to go to Buffalo, because we have a naval destroyer right here in Hamilton. The type of ship was called a tribal class destroyer, and every one of the ships, there were 27 altogether that were built. Every one of them is named after a different indigenous people. Yeah. And the one here in Hamilton was the Haida. And as I say, there were 27 made for Canada, Britain, and Australia.
Yeah, they're fairly small ships too. They're not
What's
big.
That?
They're fairly small in the terms of ships as well. And
in terms of ships, I mean, it's a big ship. It's a big ship, but compared to some of the others, it's not that big.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
And that's what it was for. It was a destroyer. It wasn't that big because it was meant to be maneuverable. Lightweight, fast, speedy, all that kind of stuff. And the Haida turned out to be the most decorated ship in the Canadian Navy, because it sank more enemy ships and submarines than any other Canadian ship.
Oh, wow.
And so it was dedicated as the most fightingest ship in the Navy. And 13 of the 27 were sunk during the war. 13 were scrapped after the war. And today only the Haida remains. And it's now here, just so you can see what I'm talking about.
It, Rachel. See, there it
Okay,
is.
I'm looking. Oh, wow. That is so impressive. Oh, my God. I like that. Very nice.
I got some
Wow.
fashion photos from a fashion shoot that we took right in front of that ship.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's so awesome.
The fashion shoot in front of it because it was just really a cool backdrop, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
bet.
so
Oh,
is
for
the
sure.
ship haunted? Let's end our dramatic pause now. And in my opinion,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
it is.
I knew it was
Because
coming.
even though it's Parks Canada and they don't allow any
they don't
formal
allow
investigation in the
investigations, yeah.
paranormal to take place on the ship, we went down, we had our cameras, just our regular SLR digital cameras to take photos. And the only equipment we brought with us were digital recorders to
Okay.
capture EVPs. And also, as I've mentioned before, your body is the best paranormal tool.
Oh yeah, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
so we could kind of get in there and do what we wanted to do, in addition to enjoying the history and everything. And
So I'm gonna be interested now to see where you picked up things because I'll tell you where I got something in there too.
Okay, so for anyone who's never been on this ship before, it
Let's
is.
just say it's pretty tight inside.
It can be, but it's a
Very close quarters.
It's
yeah.
not
For the most part, it's a self-guided tour. You just
yes.
go
it
in.
is.
Oh, okay, you just go
wander
get.
around
All right.
wherever you wanna go.
I like those. I like that.
There's no time limit, and
Yeah.
we spent hours
And it's cool
wandering
because
the ship.
sometimes you can go on a day and there's like nobody else there,
Yeah,
which is really awesome.
yeah.
Mhm.
Because when we went, there was no one else, just us.
That's awesome.
So-
That is awesome because you get to enjoy it without too many
Yeah.
distractions. Yeah.
So let's get into a little bit of verifiable
Okay.
paranormal evidence here, as opposed
Yeah,
to
let's hear
stories
it.
and legends. And
Mhm.
okay, so we're wandering the ship, and we found 2 locations that we consider to be hotspots. And the first one is down below decks in what is the officers' cabin area. It's where their berths.
His living space.
There's the officers' kitchen. There's a beautiful dining area with big gigantic dining room table. There's leather chairs for the officers to lounge back in. It's a really beautiful part of the ship. And so we went down there, and immediately you could feel the heaviness in the air. And we're wandering around, and it just felt like you're being watched the entire time. And you got to think about this, because so there's Trudy, who's a female, wandering this part of the ship where the whole crew are composed of
male.
entirely male sailors,
Ah.
right? And she could just feel the eyes staring at her. And
Yeah.
so we're rolling on our digital recorders, and so like we could feel it's like they don't like us here. And so I asked the question, why don't you like civilians being on your ship? Which comes back to what we had talked about a couple weeks ago, is, do the spirits see what we see? Do they see only in their own timeline? So if that's what they see, there wouldn't be civilians on the ship. And they're going like, what are you doing here? This is a naval ship. You're not Navy. You're not supposed to be here. And so I asked, how come you don't like civilians being on the ship? And I got an EVP that said, I'm going to hurt them.
Ah.
And if you think about it in that terms, it makes sense. It's like civilians aren't supposed to be there. They're trespassing. Get off my ship kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we did what we did there in the officers' cabins, and we moved on in our wanderings of the ship. And the second place we found that was the real hotspot was the engineering cabin and engineering office, again, which is down below decks. It's a very small area that contains those engineering departments, as well as the ship's mail room and the auxiliary radio room. And
Is
so,
that where the sonar is?
no,
No, because that's up on the other deck.
that's
Okay,
up on
yeah.
the main deck and the main
That's up on the main
communications
deck.
area.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So we're down in this little area, and Trudy walked into the engineer's cabin, and same thing right away. She gets hit with this wave of heavy atmosphere, and she says, "Whoa, Ian, you get in here. You gotta come in this room and feel this." And so when I was going through the doorway in, I'm still rolling on my digital recorder. I got an EVP that said, "Go in there, go ahead," because it was giving me permission to enter his cabin.
Interesting.
And then when I got in, my arm just broke out in goosebumps. Again, we get an EVP that
Good
after our
sneeze.
introductions, EVP, now this is the same voice
Oh, really?
that said, "Go in there."
As the previous
Yeah.
one.
As
Oh.
like, "Go in there, go ahead." We got the same voice after our introductions that said, "Hi, how are you?" So we were starting to actually interact with an
Ooh.
intelligent,
Oh, that's cool.
That's
intelligent
awesome.
energy.
Yeah, I like that.
And then at one
Oh,
point, I
excuse
put my
me.
recorder down on the engineer's bed. And right away, I get another EVP, same voice. So we're dealing with this one specific energy. And he says, "Take that off the bed." So I did. And we spent some time in there and then went into next door in the area, which I say was the ship's mail room.
Right.
And again, you could feel this energy just follow us. And, same thing. It's, Trudy asks, "Did you just follow us from the other room into here?" And again, EVP that says, "Yes, I did." It's like, it's so amazing.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I love it when things like that happen and you don't expect it, but you get so much stuff. It really, gives
Yeah,
I
well, it
think
sort of
gives you
solidifies it,
confidence
right?
you're on the right track.
So, Ian, let me ask you this because I kind of remember the layout of the ship. It's been quite a number of years. I mean, I used to live in the North End, right by the ship, like we were 2 minutes away. Where is the black and white tile floor? Is that in the officers downstairs in the officers area? Do you recall that at all?
I believe it is because I remember where the general crew,
Right.
their area and where they berth, in bunks and hammocks. That's a
And
red
for
and
some
white
reason,
tile.
I'm thinking it might have been the kitchen area, but offhand, I can't think of it now. Like I know that when we were on
Black
the
the
ship,
black and white. I think that's the officers' quarters.
yeah, the officers' quarters, because that was one area too that and I remember the black and white tile floor because I have black and white tile floor here, but I always remember black and white tile floor. I don't know why. There's just something in my brain that's wired for black and white tile floor. I don't know if it's genetically passed on to me from some, relation of mine, like Mary Queen of Scots, who, may have had a black and white tile floor. It was very popular in the Renaissance and that. It's always in my head. I always remember when I see black and white tile floors. But I remember that on the boat, and I remember that was one spot that I picked up on a certain amount of energy. The other spot was the sonar area, where the sonar is.
Mm-hmm.
That was another spot for me that I remember walking in and just going, oh, you could feel there was, and I mean, the one thing we should point out is this ship has, nothing is running on this ship, right? It is a museum. It's
That's right.
pretty much just sitting there. So it's not like you're going to pick up anything from the actual sonar functioning, anything like that, right? So, but there was a couple of spots that I recall. Now, the time that we were on there, the last time, there was a number of people because it was an open doors. And so it was one of the free sites that you could go on, right? So we popped on during that time. So there was more people and it was kind of crowded. And I just remember, you know, it's like, it's quite narrow in areas, like trying to walk through. It's like one person wide. You don't, you know, you're not going to get two people through. But yeah, it was definitely a cool spot. And I remember being on it as a kid numerous times at Ontario Place. I want to talk about another ship that people can go and see right now. Well, not right now because of the pandemic, but normally you can roll in Salem, down in the harbor on the wharf, and you can go see the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution is another ship that, now that Constitution's been up and down from the bottom of the sea more times than you can imagine. It's sunk in the harbor like more than once.
Oh, wow.
But it's a particularly interesting ship in terms of its indestructibility, and it's purported to also be haunted, the Constitution. I've been on board, but it's been a lot of years. I didn't get on board the last time I was down there, which was about 7 years ago. But I was on it numerous times as a kid. We used to spend a good chunk of our summers in that direction when I was a kid growing up. And it's a really neat old ship, but it's actually called Old Ironsides because it was made from live oak. And live oak is a particular type of oak that's partial to only the south of the United States. So anywhere in the south, and generally it's the trees that we associate in places like New Orleans or Savannah, Georgia, that are coated in Spanish moss, right? So they're these big ancient oaks. And that type of oak had the ability to absorb the shocks of cannonballs. They did not penetrate the walls of the ship. They literally bounced off because they had these 6-inch thick pieces of live oak between the thing. So it's another ship that's a really cool, you know, it's got a very, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? A very interesting history.
It has a lot of history to it.
You know, the time that, I mean, it was on the water during the War of 1812. It was one of the key ships on the eastern coast of the United States that was trolling to keep the British away. So it has quite an illustrious record in terms of having actual encounters and battles, you know, back and forth between it and other ships. So yeah, so there's definitely some, you know, some haunted tales attached to the Constitution, and that's one that people go and see.
One that I'd like to go and see sometime is over in the UK. I think it's in Southampton. Is the HMS Victory.
I used to live in Southampton.
And the Victory was like the flagship of the Royal Navy during that age of mast and sail.
Yeah, that's sort of the whole 1812. We were going to go on board the Britannia, which was in Edinburgh, when we were supposed to be doing our haunted tour there in the last fall. The Britannia is purported to be haunted as well, so that's another one. And of course, that's the Queen's ship, right? The Britannia. Now.
Right. Yes.
It's another royal ship that was more of a luxury yacht than anything else, right?
For sure.
I mean, it didn't see any sea battles or, you know, naval fight. This was a luxury yacht belonging to the royal family. But it's still purported to be haunted too. So
that ties in nicely with something else that I had in mind. So you mentioned Southampton. I also know that's where Southampton was where the Titanic, you know, left from. So what do you think about the Titanic? Do you think that, I mean, I've heard stories about objects from the Titanic that were rescued or saved, having some sort of, people believe, spirit energy or some sort of paranormal activity connected to those objects.
I have a piece.
Oh, look at that!
That was recovered from the debris field from the Titanic.
Oh wow! Look at that! Oh my goodness! I'm so impressed right now. Oh my gosh, that
Now,
is
is
so
this piece of coal
weird.
haunted? I don't know. I've never investigated it, so
Oh no, I
it's
know.
just part of my historical collection. But
Oh, that's just perfect.
yeah,
That's awesome. I'm so
you
pleased
know,
I
and
got to
it
see that.
comes with a little certificate of authenticity,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Oh, that's great. I'm so excited right now. That's just totally made my day because I think that's great. Yeah, I managed to go to a Titanic museum and it's all very sad and yeah, they had objects too, but yeah, I didn't hear of anything that was haunted there. No one was complaining about that. So,
yeah.
but I
Yeah.
imagine
Well,
So this
but
brings us
yeah,
into the
as
Queen
well.
Mary,
yeah.
because Queen Mary is the only ocean liner of that vintage related to the Titanic that still exists today.
Oh,
The
okay.
Olympic was scrapped, I think. The Queen
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth, caught fire in Hong Kong Harbor. The Britannic, which was another of the Titanic ships, or the White Star Line ship,
Yes.
Right.
it either hit a mine or was torpedoed off the coast of Greece, which has still not been determined which one. You have the Lusitania, again, was torpedoed by a German submarine in World War One. So all
Yeah,
the
the Lusitania,
great
yeah.
transatlantic ocean liners are gone, except for the Queen Mary, which is now permanently docked in Long Beach, California.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And had a pirate festival on it numerous years ago.
oh, really?
Yeah, friends of mine in California, they put a big pirate event on the Queen Mary.
Wow.
Wow.
That sounds
So,
exciting.
yeah, so there's a lot of different paranormal investigators that claim that the Queen Mary is, without a doubt, the most haunted ship.
Oh, I've heard it.
Now, I have never personally been to the Queen Mary, so I really have no opinion on the matter because I've not been there. But it was laid down in 1936, had its maiden voyage. That civilian transatlantic crossing did not last long because World War II came upon us.
Right, yeah, so
And
the ship
was converted into a...
It was converted, yeah. It was retired from a pleasure vessel to...
and converted to carrying troops
Yeah.
from North America over to Europe to fight in the war.
Yeah,
And-
there's actually a pretty famous photograph with like hundreds of
yeah, they're jammed in like
Queen
sardines.
Mary. Yeah.
And they approximately on each of these crossings, they had 15,000 soldiers
Yeah, a lot.
on the ship. And then on the return back to North America, they would load up on the Queen Mary all the injured and dying soldiers,
Yeah.
as well as German and Italian POWs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where there are stories of, there's a little girl that drowned in the second class swimming pool. They say her name is Jackie.
Yeah, there's actually too. I heard a story about that, and I didn't hear about a little girl, but a woman, like maybe 20-something woman who also seems to get up from the swimming pool and walk and leave wet foot marks, but there's no water in the pool. But how weird would that be, though? Let's just think about this for 1 second. You're a naval person or a soldier that's on board this ship going across the thing, and you're on this boat that is essentially was a luxury cruise ship, for lack of anything else. It's got a swimming pool. It's got, all of these strange, like, how weird would that be to be on a boat that had been repurposed, but yet those things were still there. I mean, they didn't get rid of them, right? The swimming pool was still there.
That's right.
The luxury berths were still there. They were probably used by the officers at that point, but it's just such a weird, a weird transition from a luxury cruise ship to a vessel that's, you know, anything, I guess, you know, that was needed. I mean, there was many ships even in the War of 1812 that were retrofitted from, you know, merchant ships to, so, but yeah, the Queen Mary.
Well, I think that's where this haunted energy comes from on the ship, is from all these crossings of the soldiers. You've got this residual energy.
Though, right? I'm gonna say, because my friend, I was saying about this whole pirate event that took place on the ship. When she was on board the ship, she did not even mention any of that, but picked up on like other passengers, but like luxury cruise passengers.
Oh,
so kind of a weird, you know, I guess it just depends on what energy you pick up, right?
But it seems that, you know, all the paranormal investigators go there and they focus on this little girl, Jackie. And I've heard verified accounts from people that actually work on the Queen Mary that there is no documented evidence at all of a little girl ever having drowned in the second-class swimming pool.
I would not have thought that either, but you know, there's been some pretty compelling, I've seen some pretty compelling footage of the footprints and that on, you know, people who have been on board and have left the cameras running overnight, and you see these wet footprints, and they don't look like a child. I mean, they're adult footprints, they're not a child. But yeah, I mean, there's so many stories tied to the Queen Mary, you know, haunting wise, and because it's still in existence, you can go online and look up numerous people who have done paranormal investigations on board the Queen Mary, and a bunch of TV shows that have been there too, right, doing paranormal investigations on board the boat itself too. But yeah, I mean, very interesting. I do want to mention we have 2 ghost ships. Sitting just off of Jordan, in very close to us in Niagara. Those ships were actually originally merchant vessels that were commandeered or confiscated during the War of 1812, and became essentially, they're just sitting at the bottom of Lake Ontario, fairly intact to this day, due to a completely freak situation during the War of 1812. Had nothing to do with the war and everything to do with the weather.
There was a storm.
The Hamilton and the Scourge.
Thank you for watching The Ghost Show Online. Join your hosts again next week as they discuss more tales of the supernatural, the paranormal, and all things spectacular. See you soon.